So it was the third night of the crusade in Bishoftu, and this young man came up to me and he goes, "Will you pray for my dad? My dad lost all feeling and movement in his hands." And so we were like, "Yeah, of course, we would love to pray for your dad. Where is he?" And so he brings his dad over, and we begin to lay hands on him and pray. And as we were praying for him, it was like these jolts, involuntary jolts, were going through his body. And as I was praying, I knew that God was tangibly touching his body in a real way. And so we got done praying, and through the translator, I said, "Tell this guy not to be nice to us. Is he feeling any better? He can be honest with us." And the man looks at us and he begins to move his hands and rub them together. And he goes, "I'm better. I'm healed." And it just sent this excitement through us. We're like, "Man, are you kidding me? God, you're so real. You're so powerful." And so it was the last night of the crusade in Bishoftu. We show up, and out of a sea of 40,000, 50,000 people, the first person we see is this young man. And he runs up to us and he goes, "My dad has been healed." He goes, "For 2 months, my dad couldn't eat, my dad couldn't drink, and my dad couldn't clothe himself. But today he did all of those things. He's completely healed."
ደጋግሞ እጄን ይዞ ሲጸልዩ እስከ ጭንቅላቴ ነው የምሰማው። ከዚህ ሲጸልዩ ይሰማል። እንዲህ ቀና ዝቅ አይልም፣ ቀና አይልም፣ አይመለስም። ሁለት ጣት ብቻ ነው እሱም አይጠነክርም። ውሃ ይሆናል። በቃ ይደረሳል። አይሰማኝም። የኔ ምንም አይሰማኝም። ያቃጥላል።
And as we're talking to the dad, he begins to open up and tell us a little bit more of his story. And what we didn't know the previous night was that, this was a recent trauma that had happened to him that caused him to lose feeling and movement in his hands. 2 months prior, he was attacked by rebels in the country. They showed up, they took all of his sheep, all of his cattle, all of his money, and they beat him. They tied his hands and his feet behind his back. They hung him from a tree, and they cut his back open and left him to die. And after that experience, not only did he lose mobility and feeling in his hands, but he had severe trauma, even mentally and emotionally, from what had happened to him. And so him and his family fled their city and had come to Bishoftu, where our crusades were taking place. And as this man's telling us his story, it was tangible to know God truly touched his body. This was a recent physical trauma, and he said, "I will never forget this healing, what took place in my body, until the day that I die." And he looked at us and he said, "But more than anything, God has also healed my mind." And that to me was the greatest miracle, was that there was this trauma, this tragedy that had taken place to him that had damaged him mentally and emotionally, but he was able to look at us and say, "I've been made whole through Jesus." And sometimes we go into those opportunities, we go into those moments wondering, "God, will you show up?" But all he's looking for is a mustard seed of faith. And in that moment, we had a mustard seed of faith, and we prayed in the name of Jesus, and we saw God's power come to this man's body, and now his life is forever changed as a result. And it was the most beautiful, amazing thing that I feel like I've ever seen with my own eyes.
በጣም ነው ደስ ያለኝ። ደስታውን መንገራችን